Some places on Earth do not just look strange, they feel wrong. Not in an obvious, dramatic way, but in a quiet, unsettling sense that something about them doesn't follow the rules we think we understand. Scientists have gone there, measured everything they could, collected samples, built theories, tested them again and again. And yet, they still walked away with the same conclusion. They don't fully understand what's happening. And the unsettling part is, neither will you. Before we go deeper, make sure you subscribe, because stories like this are exactly what this channel is about. Let's start somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, a place you've probably heard of, but never really questioned. The Bermuda Triangle. On maps, it doesn't look like anything special, just a stretch of water between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. But over decades, this region has built a reputation that refuses to fade. Ships have entered and never returned. Aircraft have taken off and simply vanished from radar. No distress calls, no wreckage, no clear explanation. One of the most famous incidents involved a group of 5 U.S. Navy planes on a routine training mission. The weather was clear, the pilots were experienced, everything was normal, until it wasn't. Their communication became confused. Their navigation systems stopped making sense. One of the pilots reportedly said they couldn't even tell where west was anymore. And then, silence. All 5 planes disappeared. Now, you might think there has to be a logical explanation. And to be fair, scientists have proposed several. Sudden storms, powerful ocean currents, methane gas eruptions from the seafloor that could disrupt buoyancy, even human error. But here's where things get uncomfortable. None of those explanations fit every case. Some incidents happened in calm weather. Others involved highly skilled crews, and in many cases, there was simply no trace left behind. It's not just what we can't explain, it's the pattern. Because this specific area continues to produce stories that don't quite make sense, even in the modern world. And that is where things start to feel less like coincidence, and more like something we haven't fully understood yet. Now let's move away from the ocean, and step back in time. Far back, to a quiet field in England where something ancient still stands, watching, waiting, refusing to give up its secrets. Stonehenge. At first glance, it's just a circle of massive stones. But the longer you look, the more questions start to form. Some of these stones weigh over 20 tons, and they weren't just found there. They were transported from miles away, without modern tools, without machines, without anything we would consider necessary for that kind of task today. Think about that for a moment. Even with today's technology, moving stones of that size requires careful planning, heavy equipment, and precise coordination. So how did people over 4,000 years ago manage it? That question alone would be enough to make Stonehenge a mystery. But it doesn't stop there. The structure is aligned with the movement of the sun. During the summer solstice, the sunrise lines up perfectly with the stones. This wasn't random, it was intentional, which means whoever built this understood astronomy. They understood timing, positioning, and alignment with a level of precision that feels ahead of its time. So what was it? A burial ground? A calendar? A place for rituals? A symbol of power? There are theories, plenty of them, but none of them fully explain everything. And that leaves us with something unsettling. We are looking at a structure built by people we don't fully understand, for a purpose we still can't clearly define. And somehow, it has stood there for thousands of years, outlasting civilizations, holding on to its silence. Now here is where the story takes a turn. Because the next place doesn't just challenge our understanding of the past, it challenges how people could create something they were never meant to see. Deep in the deserts of Peru, there are lines. From the ground, they look meaningless, just shallow grooves in dry earth. You could walk past them and never realize what you're seeing. But from the sky, everything changes. The Nazca lines. Massive shapes stretch across the desert floor, perfectly formed animals, birds, monkeys, spiders, along with long, straight lines that seem to run endlessly into the distance. Some of these figures are hundreds of meters long. Now stop and think about that. These were created over 2,000 years ago. There were no planes, no drones, no way to see these shapes from above. So how did the people who made them know what they looked like? You might assume they used some kind of grid system, that they planned it carefully from the ground. And yes, that is one explanation. But even that doesn't fully account for the scale, the precision, and the consistency of without ever seeing it from above, requires a level of planning that feels almost impossible. And then there's the bigger question. Why? Why create massive designs that can only truly be appreciated from the sky? Some believe they were messages to the gods. Others think they were part of rituals or astronomical systems. But here's the uncomfortable truth. We don't know. Not completely. And when something that large, that deliberate, and that precise exists without a clear purpose, it leaves a gap that curiosity rushes to fill. And if you are enjoying mysteries like this, subscribe now so you do not miss the next one. Because what comes next feels less like ancient history and more like something that shouldn't still be happening today. In the middle of a desert in Turkmenistan, there is a crater. At first glance, it looks like something out of a nightmare. A massive hole in the ground, filled with fire. Constant fire. Endless fire. The Darvaza gas crater, also known as the door to hell. It started in 1971 when scientists were drilling in the area and accidentally broke into an underground gas pocket. The ground collapsed, creating the crater. To prevent toxic gases from spreading, they made a decision. They set it on fire. The plan was simple. Burn off the gas in a few days, maybe a week. But that didn't happen. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And now, decades later, it is still burning. You might think there is a simple explanation, that the gas supply is just larger than expected. And that's partly true. But here's where it becomes difficult to fully explain. Predicting natural gas flow is not new. Scientists understand how these systems work. And yet, this fire has outlasted expectations in a way that feels almost stubborn, like it refuses to go out. Standing at the edge of that crater, you don't just see fire, you feel it. The heat, the sound, the constant movement of flames. It creates a sense that something beneath the surface is still very much alive. And that brings us to the final place. A place where the mystery isn't about fire, or massive structures, or disappearances. It's about movement. Slow, silent, unseen movement. In a remote part of California, there is a dry lake bed. Flat, empty, quiet. Nothing about it looks unusual, until you notice the trails. Long lines etched into the ground, stretching behind rocks. Heavy rocks. Rocks that should not have moved at all. This is Racetrack Playa. For years, people came here with one simple question. How are these rocks moving? Some of them weigh hundreds of kilograms, and yet, they appear to slide across the surface, leaving trails that can stretch for dozens of meters. No one sees them move. There are no footprints, no signs of human interference, just rocks that somehow change position over time. For a long time, this was considered one of Earth's strangest unsolved mysteries. Then scientists began to study it more closely. They installed cameras, monitored weather conditions, watched, and waited. Eventually, they observed something rare. Under very specific conditions, a thin layer of ice forms on the surface. As it melts, light winds can push the rocks slowly across the wet ground. So the mystery was solved, right? Not entirely, because even with this explanation, not every movement has been accounted for. Some trails appear under conditions that don't fully match the theory. And more importantly, it took decades to even partially understand something that seems so simple on the surface. And that leaves us with a realization that's hard to ignore. Sometimes, the world doesn't need to be dramatic to be mysterious. Sometimes, it just quietly does things we can't fully explain. So what do all these places have in common? It's not just that they're strange. It's that they remind us of something we often forget. We like to believe we understand the world. That with enough science, enough data, enough time, everything can be explained. But that's not entirely true. There are still places on this planet, real, physical locations, where the answers are incomplete, where every explanation leads to another question, where certainty slowly fades into curiosity. And maybe that's the most fascinating part, because it means there is still something left to discover, still something that challenges what we think we know, still something waiting. If this mystery left you thinking, hit subscribe and join us for the next unexplained story. Because the deeper you go into these mysteries, the more you begin to realize we have only just begun to understand the world around us.